Having reached the end of my poor sinner's life, my hair now white, I prepare to leave on this parchment my testimony as to the wondrous and terrible events that I witnessed in my youth, towards the end of the year of our Lord 1327.
Hello and welcome. Welcome and hello. This is Wait, You Haven't Seen? It's a show where we talk about movies, and specifically, we talk about a movie at least one of us has never seen before. I'm your host, Travis, aka TV's Travis. This is episode number 326, and our movie this week from 1986 is The Name of the Rose. And joining me to talk about it, it's John, aka Devo. John, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. So, The Name of the Rose. What's your history with this one? Because you brought it to me. You suggested this.
Right. So I remember seeing this. I was early 20s, and it was on late night HBO or something. And my father actually was aware of it. It was a book, and he had seen it before I did.
Okay.
And we watched together. My father was it was a calligrapher, and so of course he books, and he was
Sure.
a biblical scholar and historian and so forth. So this thing really struck a chord, and of course I got an entire narrative the entire time of
Oh, I bet.
why this, why that. So it was kind of fascinating. But Sean Connery, just how he pulled it off, it was so different from his other roles, but it's still Sean.
Oh, yeah.
So it really kind of touched a chord, and just for a long time, it's always been kind of in back of my mind a dark favorite. How about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd heard of this. I've seen the title, looking at Sean Connery's IMDb, and it would occasionally pop up on like, hey, here's Connery's best roles, and it would usually make like the honorable mentions. It wouldn't quite hit his top 10, depending on the list. But I'd always heard of it, and I didn't know much about it. I knew Sean Connery was in it, and I think I maybe knew Christian Slater, and that was about it, and that they were friars or monks. That was all I knew.
Right.
So I went into this pretty cold. I didn't realize that it was a novel until I'm in the middle of it and I'm watching it. And I think I didn't see the name at the opening credits, but when the end credits were running and I saw Umberto Eco, and I was like, wait a second, I know that name. Why do I know that name? And I went upstairs and I looked at my bookshelf. I have a copy of one of his novels that was given to me as a Christmas gift many years ago, Foucault's Pendulum. And I was like, that's why the name sounds so familiar, because I have one of his books. And I will say that after watching this movie, I want to find and read The Name of the Rose, because I think that would be fascinating to do. Because I am not of the book is always better crowd, but I am very much of the book is always different. And I'm fascinated by how you adapt a story from one medium to another, because they're always it's every medium has different storytelling style.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes you find details in the book, especially. I mean, I haven't read the book, but the way the storyline is pretty good, in my opinion. In general, It would be interesting to find out what in the book. Often they add things, and you find some details and background that aren't in the movie.
Yeah, and that led me to, I found a quick clip of Umberto Eco years ago. He was asked what he thought of the movie, and the best part about it was, all right, first of all, I'm going to give you 10 euros because you're the first person to ask me this question. And whether that was sarcastic or not, I couldn't really tell, because he seemed to have a very dry sense of humor. But he gave this kid in the audience, cash, went back up. And I think at one point I had read something where like he didn't like the adaptation, or he said some things negatively about it. But in this instance, he said, here's the thing. My book, and he's like, my book is like this thick. And he's like, the movie is very good for what it is, but it's not my book. Right. But it isn't supposed to be. Like and this might be my favorite analogy of adapting a novel into a film, is he equated his novel to a club sandwich, right? He's like, you've got your ham and your pastrami and lettuce and tomato and olives on the sandwich between two slices of bread. And that's my book. He said, and the movie can't have all of that in it. because you sit down and read the book, it's going to take you a week. You can't put all that
Right.
in there. In the movie, they have to pull the pieces they want out. So they pull out, the ham and the lettuce, and they make the movie with that. And he said, for what they did, it's very good. He's like, it's a very well made movie. It's just not the same thing as his book. Because I guess the book deals a lot more with a lot of symbols and a lot of metatextual stuff. And the movie effectively is a mystery.
Right.
But I just thought that was fascinating. It just made me want to read the book even more, because now I want to like dive into basically everything that's in the movie is from the book for the most part. But there's more there. So that was kind of fascinating to me. The other thing was, when you saw this, I'm curious, because I kind of clocked it maybe a third of the way in is when I sort of figured out what I was watching in terms of the mystery. It was very much a Sherlock Holmes mystery.
That's exactly. Yeah. It was very much, in my opinion, and that would be the best analogy to it, is a Sherlock Holmes. If you got Holmes and, you have Watson, so to speak,
Yep.
but in the Dark Ages, Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right down to
his wit, even his wit,
yeah.
at least how they portray it on the movie, matches up. If you watch or read or any Conan Doyle, same kind of similar wit, and it's very intrigued.
Oh, absolutely. I am a massive Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes fan. Like, about a year ago, I was at 221B Baker Street in London.
Oh, wow.
So I love his stories. I love every iteration I've watched. My favorite ever in terms of video or visual adaptation is Jeremy Brett from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And early 90s. But like the stuff with Cumberbatch, all of that. So like Sherlock Holmes stuff really gets me going. And this was great because it's Holmes and Watson basically coming into town, and they're going to investigate. And like, he's William of Baskerville, which is awesome. But it's that he's logical and thoughtful and doing detecting. Meanwhile, there's potential for something supernatural going on. All of the monks at this monastery think that it's the Antichrist or the devil. And then you've got Adso, his Watson, who's kind of sort of believes what's going on, but also is like very curious and trying to learn more. And so it hooked me right away. As soon as I like made that connection, I'm like, oh, this is Holmes and Watson. All right, I'm in even more. Like, you had my interest with Sean Connery. Now you have my attention. And it was quite great. And this whole cast just kept popping up more and more people. And it's a lot of great character actors. And I can't believe Christian Slater was 17 when he made this.
I know. And he did pretty well. I mean, he really did a nice job with that role.
Yeah. No, he did a great job. When you rewatched it for this, where did you watch it? I'm curious.
Well, I got it off of Prime is what I watched it off of.
Because I did too. Yeah. And something felt weird pacing wise at one point for me. And when I was reading after the fact, I realized why. And that is the sex scene was completely cut out.
That was when it'd been a long time, but I thought that, it seemed a bit truncated in a few pieces. Yeah.
And it was basically that scene, which is available. There's some other streaming services that have it, Tubi and a couple of others out there that do. And so I did find that to watch just to get the feel for it, because and after watching it, I understand why there is probably a censored cut. But leaving that in there for Adso's story makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when they cut that out, and then after the discussion afterwards, if you haven't seen that before, and I did the same thing, I kind of did wait a second, something's different here.
Yeah.
But it's explained afterwards, but there is some detail there that you miss, but you kind of pick it up afterwards. But yeah, I understand
you can certainly watch it without. There's plenty of context clues to it. I just think it's one of those that like adds another layer to it because of the way it's portrayed is very raw, and because you have these very young characters in it, they're never given an age in the movie, But Slater is a young friar, or they're friars.
Yeah.
Um,
And to an initial watcher, why was he so infatuated with her? It isn't apparent, and I actually watched it a couple of times because I hadn't seen it, and because it didn't make sense quite right away, and then okay, I put them all together and realized, like you said, there was something missing, and
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sean Connery and Christian Slater, I think, worked really well together. That I loved their chemistry. Christian Slater has said that working with Sean Connery was just fantastic. I mean, how could it not be? But apparently, what was it? Andy Garcia, just as a little tangent, Andy Garcia had a great anecdote talking about making Goodfellas, or not Goodfellas, Untouchables, like a year or two later, where whatever the scene was, Connery basically said, like, I'm just going to do this. And the director's like, cool. So Connery left, went and played golf for like 5 hours, shows up for his scene, walks in, sits down, does it, and leaves. And Garcia was like, that's pretty good. You did that all? He's like, yeah, it's not my first barbecue. Like, he was just a pro at that point.
He is, yeah.
Although this movie came out in a period where his career was a little bit on the skids.
It was.
And he won his Academy Award for Untouchables, but I feel like he kind of can thank this movie being at least an international hit for getting him something like The Untouchables, because prior to this, he had done the unofficial Bond movie, right? Never Say Never Again.
Which
wasn't great.
Came and went,
even going back as far as I loved, for just the weirdness of it, Zardoz. I watched that a couple of years ago. It's a weird movie.
I haven't seen it for so long. It was so bizarre. Yeah, it's very odd.
Very bizarre. But like, there's something about just going for it in a movie like that. Those weird 70s trippy sci-fi movies do something for me. But like, this was, Never Say Never Again, 5 Days, One Summer, even Time Bandits wasn't a huge hit at the time, and he wasn't in it for very long. But like, Outland was another one, not a big hit at the time. So for this to do fairly well, gets him, and this comes out the same year as Highlander, so that's a pretty good year for Sean Connery.
Yeah, it really was a good year for him. Speaking of which,
and then of course, he kind of gets a career resurgence with Untouchables, Last Crusade, and on, and his career is legendary. But I loved him in this, just through and through. Like you said, he had just a presence and a wit to his character that felt great and never felt out of place either. It's very easy to do that type of a character and make them feel like they don't belong in the movie.
I'd say so. Yeah, I really do feel, and I think it's one of the reasons why it caught me in it, is it was Sean Connery, and it had all the trappings of Sean's wit and character, but in a very different setting than anything I'd ever seen him in. And he just effortlessly fell into it, which kind of really, like you said, wasn't his first barbecue.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And to play then off of Christian Slater as well. Plus you have Elia Baskin is in here. I love him as a character actor. He's great. Michael Lonsdale. Michael Lonsdale as the abbot. There's something about him. There's like this quietness to his performances. I always think of him first, kind of tells you a little bit about my movie going. He had a small role in Ronin with Robert De Niro in the late 90s.
Okay, I didn't see that one.
So that's a great movie to watch. But he has this small role in that. And then his Hugo Drax in Moonraker.
Okay.
And and I just watched Moonraker not that long ago. So like, these are all fresh in my mind, but he's got this like quiet intensity to him. Everything is always like, as the abbot here, he never goes into the angry acting, right? He doesn't go Al Pacino and get very bombastic. It's always measured and quiet. And there's almost a softness to his voice, but it's like intense in some way.
very very intentional. Everything is very,
Yes.
yes. That was even his opening scenes with him. It's just immediately, this guy, he has something to say, but it's not going to be, I don't know. It is, yeah, it's really well done.
And I
And
liked
it's
that.
kind of, yeah.
The only thing was because of F. Murray Abraham's Inquisitor who comes along, I feel like the abbot sort of gets pushed aside in the last
Yeah.
act of the movie. And that was a little bit of a bummer for me. Like, and I get having F. Murray Abraham. If you can get him and you have him playing this character and you get the character that comes in, look, dealing with the Catholic Church, the Inquisition, right?
Right.
Makes total sense. But it just did feel like that kind of took the abbot right out of it. Because I almost don't even know what happened to him. Like, we know what happened to most every character. They either left or died. But the abbot, by the end of the movie, I was like, wait, did any, I don't even
It's
remember.
true. I didn't really notice that, but yes, I mean, it's very noticeable when the Inquisition occurs, and it does
Yes.
change the entire tone of the movie.
Oh yeah, big time. I I love this because I like F. Murray Abraham a lot. I think he's another one that's a great screen presence. And he's coming. He is unlike Connery, who isn't. He's back. He has to get back on the upswing and hasn't won his Academy Award yet. Abraham's coming off of Amadeus,
Oh
like a
yeah,
year or two before that, where he won
that's
an
right.
Academy Award, and I guess he was very difficult to work with on this movie, according to the director, Jean-Jacques Hano. I think, confess. This is my favorite. This is IMDb trivia, so you always take it with a grain of salt. But confess that he would prefer facing a big grizzly bear attacking him, in reference to his film The Bear, than to work with F. Murray Abraham again. Which, okay.
Wow.
But it's one of those where he brought, again, a gravitas. I just wish they would have had that earlier, maybe, because it does feel like the third act of this really flips and goes into a different, almost a different movie.
It is.
And so, I mean,
It overshadows quite a bit.
It does, because we spend the first bit of this movie unraveling the mystery, and then the Inquisition shows up and does Inquisition things, which all work really well and makes you not like them. But I almost want that. I either don't want that at all and just want the looming threat of that could happen, or I want that earlier. And so, like, that threat is hanging over as William and Adzo are trying to figure things out.
Well, from the
Remember
very
that?
opening, they do make the comment about the Inquisition, or
Yeah.
should we contact, or they were already afraid of
Mm-hmm.
that very thing happening, and then it happened, and it happened in like a tidal wave, actually, in a way, in the movie.
And in exactly the way you would expect too. Like, they just showed up and start. Bernardo, who is played by F. Murray Abraham, basically shows up, already has his mind made up what's going on, and has made his decisions, and he's just going to enact them. And boy, hated him. Like, just
He does a great job of it.
yes, he does. With well, I mean, this is a movie full of unfortunate haircuts. His was not great. It was. I'm glad though that Connery didn't have to wear a toupee for this movie. So good on him for that. But you feel bad for, like, some of the haircuts, especially when they're doing the ring of hair.
Oh my
And, like,
gosh.
they just have the little tuft right in the front. I think Lonsdale's was one of my favorite.
Oh yes.
It's very,
Yeah.
very noticeable. That,
Yeah.
or the librarians that kind of went out like almost like a disc. Like,
Yes.
his hair flattened out. That one got me too.
Yeah. The haircuts they really did try to drive that home, and it was, like you said, it was all over the place, and like there's a history to that, and I remember reading
Mhm.
about that. What had to do with those haircuts, and there was meanings behind them, and I don't remember any of it. So someone puts a lot of detail into this, coming up with all of those variations.
And that is a thing this movie did well, was just give the look and feel of this pretty isolated monastery. Um, the movie's got the trope of there's one woman in the world, the girl. Um, but in this case, the setting of it makes complete sense because it is a monastery. There is no one there but the monks,
Yep.
and the couple dozen peasants that live right around there. But it kind of fits. And all of these monks and friars, which I had to look up because I could not remember the distinction between the two. Um, I know there's different orders. There's Franciscans, there's Benedictines, there's Dominicans, but monks, from my understanding, the big difference is monks are going to be in a monastery, pretty much live there, do their thing there. Friars are going to travel around. They're going to go out where
Yes.
they're needed. So
Yeah, they're
that's what took
basically
me away.
the fathers, if you will, the pastors, priests of the time. Yes.
What did I also read? So let's see. Michael Lonsdale, of course, was great. William Hickey.
Yes.
William Hickey is in this movie in a role I don't think I've ever seen him do anything like this. Because I only think of him from things like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation
I know.
or Forget
I did the same
Paris
thing.
in his comedic roles, and he's so good in those.
Yes.
Is it Forget Paris where he's riding in the car and just reading the signs as they go by of everything? I think it's Forget Paris, but that I used to do that to annoy an ex-girlfriend of mine. I'd do the exact same thing. I would just lean against the window and just read them in a voice like that, and she hated it. But like William Hickey in this, he's not in the movie a lot,
Not a lot.
but it's memorable.
It is. I mean, he's the Uncle Lewis of the movie,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he even comes across this really strong. You're just going, whoa, and it just is. Even when he stands up, laying on the floor, what is this going on here?
Yeah. Oh, it was crazy. But I loved it. And then nearly stealing the movie for me is Ron Perlman.
That was my next. Absolutely. When I realized, and I mean, it's been a long time. It was well before his Hellboy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I sat there and he does a great job. Just plays that character, and he's so versatile. I don't think I've really realized how versatile a player, because he usually kind of plays this tough guy, but he was just, Salvatore.
He's another one that just has that presence, and he brings something with him. There's a charisma about it, and he really just goes for it. And in this
Agreed.
case, Salvatore was a character he could just go for and have fun. And I did love, he talked about playing it, and when he wanted the role, and I think he had worked with the director before, because I think the prior movie, this movie was apparently in development for like 5 years.
Oh wow.
Jean-Jacques Hano was working on that. So his prior movie was Quest for Fire, and Perlman I think was in Quest for Fire, and so he wanted to do this movie. He wanted to play this role. He wanted to play Salvatore, and the studio or somebody wanted somebody else, and so they hired somebody. It didn't work out, and then one of the financiers was like, "Well, it's got to be an Italian actor," so they hired that person. That didn't work out. It eventually gets to Ron Perlman, and his story was he got cast, and they didn't have really any dialogue in the script, and it was because the director was like, if I wrote out all the dialogue that was going to be in the script, I'd never get money to make it. So I basically had to give just a treatment, get the money and all that. And he goes, well, what do you want me to do for this? Because in the book, the character is just like he's in the movie. He speaks 6 different languages and kind of all at once. And the story goes, according to Ron Perlman, the director was like, figure it out. And so he found the different languages that Salvatore spoke, and he found copies. He got copies of the novel because it had been translated into 85 languages. And he got copies in those 6 languages, and said he went through and annotated all the lines that Salvatore had in the different languages and then just like picked and chose what words he wanted to use from which languages and learned his lines that way, which
Absolutely brilliant.
is madness. And I love it. It's so
It
good.
is.
Also, I can't imagine trying to do that. My brain just doesn't function that way. I have enough trouble speaking English in one language, trying to use 6 different languages at once. And he does it so well. Like I
Right.
completely buy that this character just is like this all the time. It was so much fun. And he's got to do all that with that makeup on too. Because he had
Oh
like
yeah.
some severe, I mean, he had a big fake nose. They gave him huge, those nostrils were the size of like
Oh
saucers. And
yeah. They did a great. I mean, the makeup on him was just phenomenal. I mean, he really that was one of the hardest things initially realizing that's Ron.
yeah, because he has such a distinct look and a distinct
Yeah.
head, and you can see it in there. But then they put that fake that denture on with like one tooth left,
Yes.
and he's Ron Perlman is never as tall as you think, but he's even more so because he's hunched over and he's got the hunchback and just the way he's moving. He really got into all the physicality of it. I loved it, and I loved the role, and the character was great because he gave moments of levity to the film without it feeling like, oh, we've got a comic relief character. Like he is
Right.
just because he's not necessarily played for laughs. It's just who this character is in this world.
Yeah.
And I dug that. I absolutely loved it. Him holding the rat up like he's going to eat it, and then
I know. Yeah.
quickly putting it away.
Yeah. And he puts his bag. You want one? Yeah, here. Yeah. Offering it to Sean.
Yep. Is so good. I just so much about that. And then you had also Fedor Chaplain Jr. or Chalapane Jr. playing the old monk Jorge.
Oh, Jorge. Yeah.
The old blind one. He was great too. I did read where they potentially were going to have John Huston play that role.
Really?
Which would have been fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But I also really liked this guy's performance because again, everybody in this felt like they understood the assignment and what they were doing. Like, because they are very over the top and very caricaturish almost in parts. Like Berenger, played by Michael Habak, who is the assistant librarian, is very over the top and very just like cartoonish almost.
Yeah.
But it fit and I loved it. And it was
And
great.
he played it well, perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was exactly what it just seemed to fit.
Yeah, it really honestly did. I mentioned Elia Baskin. I liked him quite a bit. I caught a couple of his lines I captured because they were too good. I always think of him. He's Peter Parker's landlord in the Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And he's so good at that. But like, he's just one of those great character actors. There's so many of those actors popping up in something like this,
Right?
That just bring a presence to scenes that it needs, because this whole thing takes place in this dingy, muddy, dark, dull, really kind of moribund place, and you need characters in there to keep your interest.
Right. It was very depressing visuals in there, and you really did need that, like you said, presence to bring life into it.
That's a good way to put it. Depressing visuals, because it looks amazing. Like I loved the cinematography, the way they would structure things, those sweeping vistas when like the friars are making their way in, or the Inquisition is on their way in, and just seeing the mountains in northern Italy where it's supposed to be set, and all that kind of stuff looked great. The way like all the stuff indoors really felt like it was inside these places.
And one of the things is in the very beginning, they talk about when they're walking in and doing the washing of hands,
Yeah.
and they close the doors, and Christian Slater's, Edzo makes the comment that he called it the battlements.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you felt like, you're going to war, you're being closed in here to keep the world out.
Yeah. And it really is that. Like, it's very isolated. kind of in existence. And these friars just show up there. And that's the thing, right? They're out traveling, they're doing their thing, and they come into this place, and now they're the outsiders. Um, so it was really, really kind of interesting to see all of that. And I even loved how, like, the way that they would slowly unveil a little bit more about these characters through not just dialogue in terms of the words that they used, but kind of the inflections and the way they would speak. Like there's the scene where they're out investigating outdoors. They're looking at the spot where the monk had fallen, and this is the time where they open up this sluice and just throw out produce, and it looked like it was maybe like the old stuff. I don't know, and if it was supposed to be or not. And just the way, and I caught that from William, but the way, like, he says, "Oh, another was it not deposit? What's the word he used?
Yeah, what was that?
Donation. Another donation."
That was going to say, yeah,
Like almost derisively saying, like, here's the church donating to the poor again, like doing the bare minimum by basically tossing their trash out down a hillside,
you're
not
welcome.
even giving it to it. Yeah. And just the disdain that he had for like that practice.
Yeah.
In part because, and what it tells you, because they're Franciscans, right? The Franciscans, again, I know only a passing amount, but they're more about the poor and about like helping people.
Exactly.
So it fits that character really well. And it's a great way to get that across, is just show us that and then not make a big deal about it and move on. But you know that about him. So then when Adso has his encounter with the girl, it kind of makes sense why he starts to get the feelings that he's getting because of her situation. I'm kind of glad they left in the scene where he leaves and goes out and like kind of spies on her and her family in their little hut.
Yeah.
Because that also gives more background and more kind of fleshing out of like, oh man, because it hurts him to see all that, but he can't do anything about it directly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like it was, and that further brought more, just over. I know they were trying to, I mean, the setting is, I know Dark Ages, there's kind of some, where does the Dark Ages end? The 10th century, some go up to 15th century. This is Northern Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like this is part of that, part of Europe that hasn't quite got out of the Dark Ages,
Right.
because of just the very backwards thinking, no enlightenment whatsoever, despite what's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a interesting time and place to be in, and just an interesting setting to put a mystery in. This closed off setting, the idea that we get towards the end where like the one monk is talking about the pursuit, they're preserving knowledge, but they're not seeking it out. I thought was very fascinating. And I wonder if the book goes into more of that kind of philosophy where the church wants to keep and preserve the knowledge, but they're also they're shaping what is available. Like the idea that they have this library full of books, and even William knows that this is one of the great libraries of the world. Like he's heard the reputation of it,
Right.
but they're not allowed to see it. The only one is the librarian and the assistant, and that's it. No one else is allowed in there by order of the abbot. And he's like, but there's knowledge and there's things in there, and even the whole deal with comedy and laughter, and how the Benedictines are against that, especially the old
Very
ones.
Serious. Yeah.
And the Franciscans are like, yeah, but laughter can be fine. I loved the line of, "There's nothing in the scripture that talks about Jesus laughing." And the response to this, like, yeah, but there's nothing that says he didn't. Like, it's all in how you would interpret that. And
Right,
I
absolutely.
really liked that whole exchange. That was great. So it was a lot of fun. And the music too. I love the music in this. And then I saw it was James Horner, and I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. I like his stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he did some great scores. Aliens was his. An American Tale, he did the music too.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Like I loved Field of Dreams, The Rocketeer, like all of these. He was very versatile because he could do something like this, which is very atmospheric, but then you do uh, like The Rocketeer has a theme to it, and it's closer to a John Williams type of score
Right.
than anything. And that's what I liked about Horner was he could do a lot of different things.
Yeah. He was really good at those lyrical pieces.
Hmm.
And of course, this very dark lyrical piece, almost like the Danny Elfman of more lyrical type music. I mean, they
Yeah.
have their style, but they just adapt it so well to their particular genre.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Do you have a favorite kind of moment in this movie? Something that really sticks out to you?
I find, I mean, there's so many good pieces in there, but of course, like you said, that exchange with Jorge and the whole laughter piece.
Yep.
I find that the piece where they find the library finally,
Hmm.
this moment of discovery, and it's such a pivotal moment. I find it's obviously it's very pivotal, but
Yes.
again, what you said, preserving knowledge versus discovering.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, it really resonated to me because my father would often talk about historically, there were these books they were found, these codex, if you will, and they would find them thousands of years later, 1,000 years later, they go in and they find this Codex Sinaiticus and blah, blah, so forth, whatever, something in Bulgaria and just these strange places. And nobody knew about them, but no one did anything to bring them out, much less you didn't destroy them, but you
Hmm.
didn't really go out of your way to find them.
Right. Yeah.
Strange. I mean, by today's standards, I mean, we look for knowledge. It seems very foreign.
It does seem very foreign because we like it's a virtue to go after and acquire knowledge and use that, I think. Like, and it's sought after. Knowledge is sought after a lot more today, but there is something to be said for like the idea of a power structure and being able to police that knowledge and distribute it and give out what you want and shape that. We see that happening all the time. Obviously, that's not something new. That's been going on for most of human history. And in this case, it's the church, and especially Jorge and the abbot, I think, was also a big part of it, where they're
Yeah.
like, we've got this information. They had this copy of the book that somehow somebody found out about, and uh, the reasons for it I thought were very interesting, right? And I did capture, so I captured a bunch of audio from this. There's a lot of great quotes. Anytime you got Sean Connery in a movie, there's a lot to capture. He's just a walking quote machine. But I love like when he gives a reason for why they did it, and it had comedy involved in it and laughter. And William asks, this is towards the end when they're figuring all this out, and I just love this quote.
But what is so alarming about laughter?
Laughter kills fear, and without fear, there can be no faith. Because without fear of the devil, there is no more need of God.
And that right
Mhm.
there says so much about the church at this point and what they're doing. And I get it, but also it's like, but that's kind of the backwards way to look at it. And so, but there's a logic there. There's a logic involved, flawed though it may be, that this guy is worried that without fear, like laughter will get rid of the fear. Without the fear, people are going to turn away from the church. And if they turn away from the church, well, what are we doing? And so, in order to keep that
Yeah.
there, they're going to keep them fearful by taking away the laughter, giving them nothing to laugh at.
One of the parts that seemed a little, I was a little perplexed, I'm still a little perplexed about, is that early on when Sean's character is talking about the illuminator that died.
Mhm.
And he said, "Oh yes, he was the one. These very funny pieces about the donkey and the Pope." And he goes, through this whole dialogue about this. And this is the monk
Yeah.
at this abbot with no laughter, and he is well known for his uh, comedic, if you will, or comedy, illuminations, and he's allowed to be there, and he's doing this, and he's known about this. So there's, that was one of the things that kind of confused me. It made me often wonder if some of these actions were intentional to stop him, because again, the whole laughter part.
I
I don't know
wonder.
if you took that, but I wasn't really. I was a little. It took me a while to think of that, but I never really kind of got a clear indication otherwise.
I didn't think of it at first, but I have a feeling that that particular monk maybe came to that abbey only recently.
Mm,
Like he had been somewhere else, and that's where Connery had heard of him.
I
William
got
knew
you.
of him. Now he was here doing his thing, and it was upsetting people. It was upsetting some of the higher ups in this particular monastery. And yeah, I do think that there was, maybe some foul play at work, trying
Yeah.
to suppress that.
Again, if you read the book, that'd be wonderful to find out if that's
Yeah.
indicated or even spelled out.
Yeah, I definitely will. There's a great exchange like right away because William and Adso show up, and it's known that they're investigators. Like they investigate this kind of stuff. And the moment with the abbot when he first gets there, first of all, I love when they show up. They go through the whole hand washing thing. They get to the room, and you got Adso's over there doing the pee-pee dance, and
Mastering
William,
nature.
the way he said that to him was so good. Where he it was
Well, with all due respect.
Nope, that's not the one. Where was it? It was William telling him
to command nature. Yes.
Yeah. I put everything in weird spots, but basically, yeah, in order to command nature first, you must listen to it. And then he gives him directions.
You must,
yes.
Learn to
That's
obey.
what it was.
Yes.
And gives him the directions on where to go. And I liked because he's like, but you said you've never been here before. And
it's so great.
When we arrived, I saw a brother making for the spot in some haste. I noticed, however, that he emerged more slowly, with an air of contentment.
That's such a great way to put it. Like, basically, I saw somebody run for the bushes and then walk out calmly afterwards. So he really had to go, and it was just perfect. There were so many moments like that.
So many
with William when they're walking around, they're investigating, right? And he sees like the whole thing about the snow.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have such snowy ground here. It is often the parchment on which the criminal unwittingly writes his autograph.
That was the moment where I figured out, oh, this is Holmes and Watson. He is straight up investigating, because that is such an Arthur Conan Doyle line. In the way that it's written is just great. I loved that. Here was the donation one.
Another generous donation by the church to the poor.
It's just so like the vitriol he has for that is great.
Right.
And the Sherlock Holmes got a little on the nose with
my dear Adjo. It's elementary.
Elementary.
Of course it is. And after, okay, so William knows that Adso did something with the girl, like right away.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing, right? We like to think we hide our emotions really well as people. We really don't. Most of the time we give it away. It's just, is the person that we're trying to hide it from perceptive enough to notice? And in the case of Adso, because he's so young, he can't hide it very well. And so William knows it. But I loved where it's that night and they're back in the room and Adso is just racked with the guilt of what happened and wants to confess. And I like how William tells him, tell me about it as a friend first. That's a great moment because it really gives you so much about their relationship right there. Where Adso still is looking to him as, he's always calling him master and he's looking up to him. And William is like, yeah, that's fine and all, but just talk to me. Just talk to me, kid.
Right.
And
because he's just a kid. I mean, he's not mature. He's
no,
just
not at
figuring
all.
this stuff out.
And he's not going to admonish him for what he did. Like
No.
there would have been other friars or other monks that would. They would freak out on him. But William, it tells us something about him as a person, and maybe gives us a little insight into what his life was like at some point, where he's understanding that things can happen, especially to the young ones. But when they're talking about love versus lust, and him asking, have you ever been in love before? And I love that, because have you ever been in love? Well, yes, lots of times. And he starts listing all the authors. He's like, no. With and he's like, oh,
right, yeah.
And the last line he says in that exchange:
how peaceful life would be without love, Agile. How safe, how tranquil, and how dull.
It's true. It would be
accurate.
It's very accurate. Yeah, loved that, because it's just a real human moment. And I think Adso took a lot from that. Also, I kept thinking he was calling him Agile for like the first half of the movie.
Yeah. I was thinking Edso, or it was.
Yeah, or Enzo.
It's Sean's, his Scottish broken.
Yep, can't help it. It's Sean Connery.
Doesn't matter. It sounded great anyway.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds wonderful. When they meet William Hickey, I just love this description.
I also know that anyone who disputes the verdict of an inquisitor is guilty of heresy.
That was a different moment. That's where Adso is being like, why aren't you saying anything to this inquisitor? Why didn't you speak up? You know the truth. And again, there's so many times where they give you info about the character without having to explicitly go into and say, well, this happened to me. They do eventually kind of give us that.
Right.
But there's all these breadcrumbs of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just nice little strokes.
And I loved that. That's the kind of storytelling I really like. That's character work. You don't just need an exposition dump. Sure, it helped that eventually in Act 3, he's like, look, this happened to me. I was forced to try this man. I acquitted him. They put me in prison, and then I recanted, and he was burned at the stake because of me recanting. So that's the guilt he's had to live with ever since then. And I like getting that reveal, but we don't need that right away. We can build to that. And actually, by building to it, gives that more weight, because we see like what he's going through throughout the whole movie.
It does give you, and you also, the whole time, it gives you that, it helps you pay attention, to be honest with you, because you're trying to figure out what this guy is all about. There's something in his background, and you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel that type of storytelling is much more compelling. And, you can say, well, it didn't move very slowly. Some people would say that, but it's not. It gives you time to think and to contemplate all the words, because they're giving you lots of, like you said, breadcrumb. I mean, it's almost, when you get to it, you realize, hey, they gave us all the information. Almost just right to the actual, period.
Yeah, they give you enough to keep you going. And the pacing of the whole movie, I think, is really good too. It takes its time, but it never feels like it's taking too much time. The story is always moving forward. It's just not always like a breakneck pace. We don't need that all the time. That's not this kind of story anyway. But
we don't need Transformers here, folks.
No, we really don't. You mentioned it, but I love when they discover the other entrance to the library, which is great because it's hidden underneath like a crypt. I'm always a big fan of any kind of like hidden passageways.
Yeah, got some sepulchers. You got it. You got me.
Yep. But when they get in there and he realizes where they've found and that it's the library, just the excitement in William's voice when he says,
"Do you realize we're in one of the greatest libraries in all of Christendom?"
Like, that is just a kid on Christmas morning. He could not be more excited for anything, to the point where I definitely got.
How many times we've ever heard Sean Connery sound like that?
right? Like giddy. There's the joke
Right.
in Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the character of Elsa talks about Henry as being giddy as a schoolboy, and the joke is like, the professor, he was never giddy, even as a schoolboy. And so for Sean Connery to do that is just so great, and I'm going to keep this forever because I loved it. There was.
Are you not confusing love with lust?
That's great because that is a obviously older, more mature person who's lived a little bit longer, talking to the young kid who, let's face it, when you're young, love is a lot easier because
Absolutely.
you don't know any better. And I kind of like where immediately he Adso starts talking about like, well, yeah, but I want to help her. I want to like help her out of her poverty and all that. And his response is so perfect because his response is like, oh dear, oh no, you actually are in love. That's bad.
You've become codependent.
Yep. Well, and it's it not only that, but just this exchange.
Oh dear.
Why, oh dear?
You are in love.
Is that bad?
For a monk, it does present certain problems.
Again, he's not wrong. That's accurate.
Absolutely.
You can have a little trouble with those vows if you're in love. So yeah, there was that. I did very much enjoy that. There's also
Monkeys do not laugh.
that just made me laugh, especially like just using that out of context of the movie. Just having Sean Connery say "monkeys do not laugh."
It was so random. It wasn't random, but it was so unexpected.
Yes, absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. It's very unexpected because you in that situation, what you're expecting is something very regal to be said. And instead he just comes back with monkeys don't laugh. Like,
That was a good
everyone
clip,
knows that.
actually. I kind of forgot that, but it is a great line.
It's really, really good. Adso himself just had only a few, but I started playing this one, but I liked this.
Well, with all due respect, it seems that whenever you ask me a question, you already have the answer.
Which, yes, again, that's Watson talking to Holmes.
Yeah.
Being like, why are you asking me? You already know.
Yeah, why?
I also like when they find the library and then Adso goes off and gets lost, which I was completely lost. I had no idea where anybody was, and I would still be wandering that today. But he gets smart and he ties part of his robe and uses the string. And I thought that was genius. And I like even where William tells him like your classical education has helped, right? Because that was what was the story of Theseus in the labyrinth,
Yeah, absolutely.
where he gets the ball of string. He does that like it's genius, and it was great. But when they're in there and they're trying to figure out that mirror, and you start hearing the chattering, which was throwing me off at first too. So I'm like, what is that chattering? And I just loved.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid. I'm cold.
I'm cold. It's freezing in here.
Well, they're walking around this Escher-like staircases.
Yeah.
Left and right. Something like Harry Potter-esque. You know, you feel like they're moving around almost.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was pretty good. I also liked, this is after they meet Salvatore.
What language was he speaking?
All languages and none.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Normally, it's funny. I say this a lot, like normally voiceover doesn't work for me, but I'm finding that no, it's just bad voiceover that doesn't work. In this case, this voiceover was kind of a great framing device to tell us this is a story being told. This is Adso recounting what happened to him as a young man. And just the very, very end, as he's like, well, we went off, because that ending is very bittersweet, right? As they're leaving, everything has gone to hell. The Inquisitor's been taken out by the peasants, and two of them burned at the stake. and just all sorts of craziness is going on. And they go to leave, and I'm thinking like, oh man, the girl just left, like she's gone. And then there she is standing there waiting as they come by, and they have this very touching moment, and then he just leaves.
Yep.
He makes the decision to stick with his faith and stick with his vows and all of that, despite, that was not easy for Adso as a character.
No.
Um,
He's
then,
very conflicted in that view. You can see he doesn't know what to do at first.
Yeah. And kind of, I like the fact that William is riding along in front of him and just gives one quick look back and then keeps going. And it's basically William telling him, this is your decision to make. Mm-hmm. I cannot help you here. You have to decide. Whatever you decide, but I'm going. And for Adso, now he's stuck between, do I stay with this woman who I am feeling something for, or do I continue with, what I feel was my life's path ahead of that? And I like where then this is where like good voiceover, because we get sort of a wrap up where we get the old man voice saying, I never regretted what I chose. And
she was the only earthly love of my life. Yet I never knew nor ever learned her name.
It's a very bittersweet ending, because
it's kind of a quasi love story.
Yeah, I mean, and he never forgot her.
Yes,
he never forgot her. He moved on with his life, but he never replaced that part of him. But he also never knew and never learned her name, and she was just she was a part of the tapestry of his life, but only a part of it and a part of the whole. And I just I really like that, because it feels, I don't know, it feels real somehow, because that really is kind of what life ends up being like. Is you get a lot of movies tell us a lot of times that like everything gets sort of sewn up and everything comes full circle. And that doesn't always necessarily happen. People will come and go from your life. And you may have a strong connection with somebody at a young age, and you may never reconnect with them again. But that is part of your journey, and it's part of what made you who you are. And I kind of like that that's how this ended, because I think it would have been easy to make it the more Hollywood ending of him ending up with her and staying. That takes away something to me from him.
Right. And, I think throughout, there's so many times that people have all of these, they stand on these hills of their beliefs throughout this. Some of them are their beliefs that they are the papal and they are entitled to this life. You have those that are, well, life should be stoic. And you have others, it's about charity. They even talked about, what was it? The poverty of the clergy, which was Umberto, William Hickey's character.
Ubertino, yeah.
Ubertino, yes, correct. Thank you. And, they're talking about that, well, we have to hide him because of this book, but they're all just these really strong, they take really strong positions, everything. And this young man, he doesn't have a strong position. And yet at the end, he takes a position, but he still retains his humanity, if you will, where some of these people have kind of thrown it away for their just extreme belief.
And also, like, that was the whole sort of subplot of this debate that was going on, right? Where the Pope was sending an envoy, who's sending a cardinal to go and debate with these Franciscans about the church and the use of money in the church and poverty and all of that kind of stuff. That is only barely, like, the surface is just scratched on that debate. I'm sure the book goes into that a lot more. I feel like that would be a big part of it. And so that's a really, really kind of interesting, bone to chew at a little bit. So I also love,
there's a little bit of that. You can tell there's a little bit of that bone to chew, or chewing on the bone of the Catholic Church, especially at that time.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, and very shortly after we had the Reformation and so forth. But yeah, I agree.
And even like this movie does a great thing where there's stuff that's done ritualistically that feels like it's just done because they do it. When the abbot meets William for the first time, and then he does this again with Bernardo when F. Murray Abraham shows up, is the abbot greets them and goes in for a kiss. And it's very awkward. For one, they keep their eyes open, and it's just this like slow moving, gentle kiss on the lips. And it feels really, really awkward.
It is.
And I know it's supposed to. And I thought like the version of it at the beginning with William was already fairly awkward. Not because it's two men kissing, it was just the way that they did it.
Right.
But then the exact same thing happens with Bernardo. And I was like, okay, so this is a thing that they do, and it's like going through the motions. And there was another moment of that going through the motions, because you get some of it with like exchanges where, hi, basically, hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm doing fine. But they'll do it in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
But when they have the scene of the peasants coming in, offering their tithings, bringing in their chickens and all that kind of stuff, and it was the guy, the monk that's working that's like blessing them as they leave, and I captured it because it's in Latin, but it was just the way he did it, and you have to picture him doing this, and it's almost just robotic.
Nemo est qui reliquir italiquid propter me, qui non accipia centis tantum nomen tempore.
Like, yeah, okay, bless you, thank you,
Bless you. Good luck.
On your way, next. And it was just, I love that is one of those things that makes the movie feel like a world lived in when you've got that moment going on, because that guy has said those words to these peasants daily or weekly or whatever for who knows how long, and it's just yeah, okay, come on, thanks for the chicken, move on, next one. Oh, thanks for the eggs, great, put them over here. Like, it's just, I love that kind of stuff. That to me was great.
That's good.
There was Elia Baskin's character had some of my favorite lines, because he is the one that knows everything that's going on for some reason. There's always that one character, right, that just like knows, and he's not part of the conspiracy, or he's not part of like what's going on. He just knows things. He hears stuff. And the way he would phrase things. So when they get there, there's a monk that has died. He's already been buried. But the first night they're there, or like second night or whatever, is when they discover the second monk, the Greek translator. They find him upside down in the pig barrel. Which, by the way, the first time they smash cut to that barn and they're butchering the pig,
yeah,
I was not prepared for.
Yeah,
I wasn't ready for that, and pig screams are terrible. So if you watch this movie, be prepared. That's going to, and you can't, like, there's no prediction. It just smash cuts to it. But
yeah,
they find the translator in the barrel, and they pull him out of there and clean him off, and then we go to the like autopsy where they're checking out the body and all that. And this is where William is doing his investigating. He's talking to Severinus, and he's saying, "Oh, this gentleman and the first one that died knew each other, and like, did they work together?" And I liked where Severinus is like, "Oh no, they worked together, but like brotherly. It wasn't anything else." And then the way he said it, the phrasing of it.
I mean, flesh can be tempted according to nature or against nature. And they were not of the latter disposition, if you ascertain my meaning.
Like, I'm going to tell you this, but I got to use phrasing that in case anyone overhears us, they're not, I can't get in trouble for it.
Right.
And I liked that. It was like, yeah, they were friends, they were close, they worked together, but that was it. And again, it's a monastery. And by this point too, we've seen several shots of Berenger, the assistant librarian, just leering at Adso.
Oh.
Just uncomfortably undressing Adso the whole time.
On a tangent, did you understand the you know, a lot of that stuff I got, but the VAT, I didn't get that.
I'm not
Why
entirely
I wasn't
sure.
sure on that either. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure if I didn't do the research, but I'm sure there's a reason, but I didn't get that. And the other thing is, and I can't help this, and it's just me.
Mhm.
Whenever I see Elia Baskin, I always think of Yakov Smirnoff, the old the comedian. I
Yeah,
don't know
there's a bit
why.
of that.
I can't help it, and I think it's the way he comes across, and he kind of looks, but anyway, that's just me. Okay, that's just me.
No, I totally get it.
But he comes
It's
across, and he does have that kind of very, you know, oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you something, but you know,
well, because he said that, and then later on, we get another scene where after Berenger dies, they find him in the bath, right? Which,
yes,
and it was interesting because at that point, I'm thinking, okay, wait, did he like feel a bunch of shame and off himself? Like, what happened here? And they find him in the bath, and when they're checking him out, and one of the things that Connery notices is that his left hand has the ink on it. And I liked the way that, again, Severinus said,
Yes. Brother Berenger was inverted in many ways.
he was inverted in many ways.
many ways.
Coded language to be like, yeah, Brother Berenger like boys.
Yes.
He liked the young ones, which is not cool. But inverted in many ways. I like that phrasing. This was what I talked about earlier with towards the end, Jorge.
Not search for, because there is no progress in the history of knowledge.
That's just a backwards way of thinking. There is lots of progress in the history of knowledge, and that's about the only way you can progress is to know what's happened before. But again, as we've established from him, the knowledge is like laughter. It's going to remove the fear, and without the fear, people are going to leave the church. So there's that. F. Murray Abraham. I got a couple of his real quick. I got to play these because they're great. Again, the Inquisition, right? He's an inquisitor. And at first, we don't know William was an inquisitor. We don't even know that when he's picked to be on the tribunal, which might have been my favorite scene just because of the way it plays out, where you're like, you know what's coming. You know how it's going to go, but it's still just the effect of it was great because here's Bernardo, the inquisitor, who we know William is not a fan of, and to the point where the other Franciscans are like, we got to get you out of here. Bernardo's on his way. And he's like, we'll get Urutino gone because that's more important. I'll deal with Bernardo. It's great because he's not afraid of him. And then we learn, then he gets picked to be on the tribunal, and he has to make judgment. And then we learn, oh yeah, he used to be an inquisitor. He used to do this.
Right.
And the inquisitor shows up, and like I said earlier, he's already got his mind made up. He already knows what's going on. He's just going to dole out the quote unquote justice, to the point where William has his outburst where he says, more monks will die with their black fingers and their black tongue. Sure enough, right after that, Malachi, I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't think it's ever spoken, but the librarian, the one with his hair that comes out like a disc. He wanders back in and dies, and he has the same black tongue and black finger. And they're like, just like William had said. And then you get Bernardo's response.
Just as I, too, would have known had I been the murderer.
I mean, yes, but also no.
Well, I feel like Bernardo, he picked him almost baiting him because they already had a history and he didn't like him because he went against his decision originally. Yeah. So I feel like this was a bit of any way he could, he was going to try to get him back.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last one, because I just had to.
And was caught in flagrante delicto with a witch.
That line.
In flagrante delicto with a witch.
With a witch.
Well, look.
He was honest.
He was. Oh. I loved Remigio and how like he basically just got to the point where he's like, you know what? Yeah, no, I used to be whatever the dulcimite. I don't remember the naming.
Yeah.
But they were.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
They're
The
depicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically depicted as like similar to the Franciscans, but more extreme. Where the Franciscans are
Right.
like, we don't want people to be poor. We want to help them out. This order was more militant towards that, and not just. They felt like everyone should be poor and kill all the rich people. And he was part of that, and I liked him basically towards once the Inquisition shows up and starts yelling at him, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, fine, I did it. That's just yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it, and I just appreciated that. Like there was something about that I really liked. It's kind of a bummer that this was one of his last roles because I think he passed away not long after this movie. But he was great. The whole movie, like this, I'm kind of amazed that I never saw this. As big a fan of Sean Connery as I am, it just was one I never sought out. So,
and there's so many people in here. There's international that, I mean, aside from being in this, I've never seen him before or after, because it's all, German actors, Italians, and they're huge in their own countries. So they carried their roles fantastic.
Yeah, and it was one of those where it was not a hit in the States. It did not. I think it made like a third of its budget back in the U.S., but it was a big hit internationally. I think in part because of an international cast, but also this kind of feels like a movie that would do better in Europe than it would in the U.S., especially in the mid '80s. Doesn't feel like your sort of mid '80s American movie going audience wants to see this. And so it kind of makes sense that it would do better overseas, but it was good enough to turn a profit. So that's, I'm happy for that. But I think that's part of also why I never saw it was it kind of came and went and it wasn't thought of for a long time. And then Connery goes on to do much more, with Highlander, with Hunt for Red October and Medicine Man and all the different movies that he did for the next 15 years before he finally retired.
Right.
That this one just kind of slipped through the cracks and wasn't one that I ever really thought about. So I'm glad you brought it up as something. Hey, have you ever seen this? You should check this movie out because this was a great choice. It really was.
I was good. I was just glad to see it again. Honestly, it brought up some fond memories. Just watching that with my dad. The movie you watched with your dad, and hearing him going on the historic. In hindsight, like, boy, I wish I remember half the things he told me about this movie.
It's a cool connection to it because of him being a calligrapher. And it's another aspect that I bet the book dives into a lot more is the preservation and calligraphy.
Yeah.
Because that stuff fascinates me. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is pre-Gutenberg. So this is what happened.
Yeah, there's a book I picked up years ago called How the Irish Saved Civilization, and it had to do with monks saving a lot of stuff from the Middle Ages and before, and doing this work.
Interesting.
Preserving and translating all of these works. And that kind of stuff fascinates me because prior to Gutenberg and prior to, all of that, like it was oral history or it was this kind of thing. And it's such a different, it's bizarre to think about a world like that where information, we're so lucky to have information available to us so quickly. The problem is that, of course, can get weaponized and be used for misinformation. That's the other side of that coin. But the fact that we have it available to us is astounding. And to think that like there was a time where it just literally wasn't. Like you knew what was going on locally, and that was it. You didn't know what happened in other parts of the world. Sometimes you might never know, or if you did find out, it was days, weeks, months later after the fact.
Right. And that's one of the things that you talk about the end of it. Suddenly this monastery, I mean, it's a dumpster fire, almost literally.
Yeah.
Uh, and they just ride off, and almost no concern that there might be any. It's not a hasty. It's just okay. It's time to leave because, again, information moved very slowly.
Hmm.
The Inquisitor's gone. The papal, envoy has already left. Let's just go. Let's go, and that's it.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah.
you don't hear him saying, "Oh, we better get out of here." Boy, I hope they don't find us.
No, they'll just move on, keep
Oh,
doing what they're doing, and sadly, all those books and all that knowledge, for the most part, just went up in flames. Like he was able to
yep.
rescue a few of them, but that was about it. I did also read that one of those shots, Connery actually caught on fire.
Really?
Like his robe caught on fire, and the director had to like jump on him and get that put out real quick. Also, the guy that played Jorge was like 80 at the time, and he was doing a lot of those scenes by himself. And again, this is a story, so I don't know how accurate it is, but supposedly he showed up late one day or something happened, and they had to film and they had to set stuff up, and so they were doing it hastily, and something fell and hit him that was on fire, and the director was concerned, obviously, checked on him, and his response was, "I'm 80, I'm going to be dead soon. How was the shot?"
No, there's a man who loves his craft.
Which I want to believe, because I have seen that mentality in other people before. There was a great moment, Alton Brown, one of my favorites. I loved Good Eats and all of his work that he would do on the Food Network. He was doing a series called Feasting on Asphalt, and they were riding motorcycles across the country. And there's a part, he was somewhere out west, and he laid his bike down, and he was giving an interview talking about that moment, and his whole crew runs up to him to check on him, and the first thing he asks is, "What are you doing? Keep the camera rolling. Like, get the shot."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's laying there with a broken arm from falling off of his bike. So part of me kind of believes that this guy might have actually said that to the director. Like, "I'm old, whatever. Did you shot work or not?" Like, that's a
I think at
veteran.
that age, it does make sense. I mean, if you're that age and that's been your craft all your life, you would hope that they would have that sense, that gravitas of the, this is the shot. We must
Yeah.
have that shot.
And like, I'll be fine, whatever. And he ended up living a few more years. So, good for him.
Good for him.
And I liked him. This whole movie, I liked this movie. Like, it's
unique in so many ways. And I don't know, it is different, but it was very enjoyable. And I think part of that, like you said, the Sherlock hominess of it, if that I can say that.
For sure.
Conan Doyle fans out there.
But, just the whole nature of it, and then to realize, like, yeah, they had to pull parts of the book and tell a story out of that, and it makes sense that they would latch onto the mystery in that, because that's the compelling story that's going to translate to film.
Agreed. And the building, they kind of make, like you were talking about a little bit of that, the whole sepulcher and so forth, people coming in through doors, like there's this pane moves out, and here comes here comes a friar through a wall.
Yeah.
It's just the whole thing was just really clever, and little things, just that, so many details in that movie.
And it does what a good mystery does, which is give you enough information to feel like you've solved it ahead. Like, you get enough information, and you're able to figure out what's going on just before the movie reveals what's happening.
Right.
And that I really enjoyed. And that's
Absolutely.
what makes the Sherlock Holmes stories great, because you always feel like you're as smart as Holmes at that point.
Right.
So,
he's pulling out sextants and the glass eyes and all of the things, and you just kind of know this man is extremely learned.
Yes.
Which adds to that. It makes him much more, the reputation. You want to believe this guy. Everything he says has to be true.
Yeah. And then, of course, to have the gravitas of it being Sean Connery too, like his presence somewhere, he just
Oh yeah,
commands your attention whenever he's doing
yeah,
something.
yeah.
I agree with a lot of the lists that I've seen now that I've seen this movie, where this does hit that honorable mention. It's not quite a top 10 Connery performance,
Right.
and that's not a knock on the movie. That just tells you how
No.
good he is. But it's up there. It's better, and certainly better than some of the stuff that I've seen him in. I mean, I would put this above Zardoz, even though I have a secret soft spot in my heart for that movie. I would put this above, things like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and the Avengers and some of the stuff that he did, where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
what are you doing there? But no, it's really good, and he's invested in it too. I think is the other thing. He's such a professional, and everybody in this is so professional. There's nobody phoning it in. Everybody's bringing it in their own way.
It falls into that, in my opinion, into that cult classic genre. It isn't mainstream, like you said. It really didn't, call out 1980s movie, right?
Right.
It really was. It kind of held its own in its own niche for what it brought to film at that time, especially, and
Yeah.
him in that role.
Oh, for sure. It's very much worth seeing, I think. If you're a Sean Connery fan, or you're a fan of murder mysteries or mysteries in general,
Yeah.
as well as just something that's a little bit different, something that gives you that without having to devolve. There's like one scene where there's somewhat of action going on. It's very brief, and it's basically just Salvatore tried to like drop a rock on them, and they chase him for a few seconds and capture him almost right away. But like that's it. It doesn't devolve into having to be an action oriented thing. It's very much just a piece dealing with these monks in this monastery and these friars, and I like that. So I think it's worth watching for sure.
Yes. If no other, just seeing Ron Perlman being Salvatore, that is just
chewing it up, just going for
it's
it,
great.
man. I love
Some of
Ron
my
Perlman.
favorite parts of the movie, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, it's worth it for Sean Connery and Ron Perlman alone, and then you throw in, then you've got Elia Baskin, you've got William Hickey tossed in there just for fun. Vernon Dubchev. We had a bunch of like James Bond stuff going on in this.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's absolutely worth seeing. So thank you for bringing this to me, John, and
So happy
and having me watch this.
So glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, this was great. This was a lot of fun. Have you got anything you're working on or you're doing that you'd like to tell people about?
I really come to this through, Charles McFall and Joe, several years, contributing to their, back in the Pokemon Go podcast, I actually kind of got to know them, but their Wise and Nerdy is really, I do little contributions there.
Excellent.
And of course, beginning to get involved with the volunteering and this coming fall at Dragon Con.
Excellent.
But I just really enjoy the community. And, my wife will say, "Oh, so you're a podcaster?" No, I'm not. I'm just a contributor. And that's where I have so many things going on in my life, between work and, all the projects, personal projects I have. I mean, I work on vehicles and cars and, things around the yard. So this is really what I like doing, contributing. And I'm glad that I could contribute that. And I'm really happy to be on your show. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, for sure. We'll do it again.
Oh,
sometime.
absolutely. I'm sure we can find some interesting movies that we've talked a few. So maybe in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be at Dragon Con this year. So
great. It'd be great to
we'll be able to hang out for a bit, and it'll be good to see you there. So that'll be wonderful. And I'll be at Dragon Con, and I have decided the movie. I'm not going to tell anybody what it is yet, but soon you will find out what movie we'll be talking about at Dragon Con Live, which I cannot wait for. And it's scary that we're like 2 months away. Not even.
Yet another mystery.
Another one. Ooh. That's what we like to call a tease, folks.
Absolutely.
As for what's coming up next week, that's also going to have to be a tease because I have to figure that out. But I do have Brian Ibbett coming back on the show in a couple of weeks to talk about PCU, which is a movie I have wanted to do on this show for several years. And I found out that he hadn't seen it, but he owned a copy of it. And I said, well, that's perfect because it's not streaming anywhere, so you can actually watch it. So we're going to do that in a couple of weeks, and we're inching closer and closer to Cagepalooza 2025, which I cannot wait for. It's the month-long celebration of the one and only Nicolas Cage. Because can't help it. Every year, every August.
I fell in love with him with Raising Arizona. After that, he had me.
Yes. He makes choices, and he goes with them, and I love it. So that's what's coming up soon. But John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
This has been a ton of fun. If you are going to be at Dragon Con, come say hi. And
I will.
And for anybody out there, if you're going to be at Dragon Con, come say hi. I'll have ribbons this year for badges. I'm making some ribbons up. So we'll do that. But until next time, just remember, enjoy your movies and let's be excellent to each other. Also stay hydrated. It's really hot out there.
Stupido, me no know nothing.
Stupido,
I know nothing.